Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all, welcome once again to the Kindred UMC pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live but pre-recorded from Kindred Studio A, aka my front room. My name is Chris Hayden. I'm the pastor at Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young. I'm the Director of Community Engagement at Kindred UMC.
And I'm Chloe Archer as guest.
You said that last time. You got to come up with a new one now.
Oh, what's a new one? My only identity right now is a PT student. So.
Oh, there you go. PT student. She's here to answer all of our physical therapy questions, which come up a lot in this actual. No, I neglected to mention in our last episode, I'm wearing the brand new Kindred UMC t-shirts.
I almost wore mine today.
Available now for the low price of $15. So, you know, if you're not on the group chat, send us an email. We'll put you on the group chat, and then you can get one. You can reserve one and order one. Do you want one?
Yeah, I would love one.
Okay, perfect. See, already endorsed by Chloe Alcher.
You're killing it.
Very close. Very close.
Okay.
Killing it.
I give up.
All good.
I give up. So we are continuing our march through Mark, and we are arriving very, very shortly at the resurrection, Easter Sunday, good part of the story. But before we get to the good part, we got to go through the bad part. In every good story, there is a moment called apostasis. And it's when the hero essentially has to lose something significant or often die. And the story of the Christ is absolutely no different whatsoever. And so tonight we're going to be talking about the crucifixion, which can get a little heavy because it's pretty graphic what they actually did to people. Rome was like, they kind of industrialized torturous murder. Yeah. So first of all, before we read the text, what... do you have any, because both of you have been around the church for a minute or so, and I'll answer first and then I'll ask you to answer so you can have time to think. What stories how was the crucifixion kind of originally presented to you as you were coming up in the church? My earliest memory that I can remember was, and I wasn't even involved in the church, I was just, I think it was 5th grade. And I went away, all of my neighborhood friends were going to some Baptist camp, and it was like, okay, we'll go to, it's like a sleepaway camp for 1 week. And, you know, they did the camp thing where they fill you full of starch, wake you up, deprive you of sleep, pull you out of your comfort environment. And then on the last night or the close to the last night, they traumatize you with the horrific details as a 5th grader of what Roman crucifixion was, and everyone cries.
Yeah, I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I remember similarly, in camps and in youth groups, there's literally a song I used to remember about, from VBS, about, the ABC prayer that you would pray to accept Jesus into your heart, and that's how it was always presented to me as
don't forget one of those steps.
Yeah, admit, believe, confess. That's what I was always told.
Interesting. So my story is a little different. When I grew up, I kind of went to a Catholic Sunday school. I'm not Catholic, but my best friend growing up was, who lived in the neighborhood, and I wanted to go to church. But my mom worked on Sundays because she was a nurse, so
what a nerd.
Tag along. I wanted to. I know it's really peculiar for a little kid to do, but I just wanted to.
What was going on with that Catholic church? They must have been doing something right.
I just wanted to go to church, and I didn't know why.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's
my mom's a
interesting.
Christian, so.
You know, I have a similar thing. I remember when my mom was like, well, there's a choir at this church, and I was like, yeah, that actually sounds nice. I was like an 8th grade bad little kid, just smoking pot and never doing homework and just a real rapscallion, real knucklehead. And I was like, yeah, I want to sing in a choir. I don't know where that came from.
Sold.
But it worked. It got me here.
Yeah.
So go on.
Yeah, so I don't really know why I went, other than I knew my mom was a Christian and I just wanted to learn more about it. And so I'd go on random Sundays of the Sunday school. And it was just the typical, Jesus died for your sins, and they nailed him to the cross. So, do good things forever.
Big old, crucifixions with his body on it, up
in
front?
the church, in the actual cathedral, yes, but in the little Sunday school section, no. It was just looked like a little kid's classroom.
Some people have weird memories about that. Do you remember, or was it just it's just part of the decoration?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In my little kid brain, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. He died for my sin, so I'm grateful for him.
Yeah. I definitely have a critical view of how, that camp experience, as you can probably tell by the way I depicted it. And yet, I also think it is important at developmentally appropriate stages to talk about at least why. So the Gospels don't go into graphic detail about it. They don't talk about the actual mechanisms of what causes pain and death during the process. And I think that's a little overboard for fifth grade, but to do that, which is what happened to me. But there is something about the intended symbol of the cross for the Romans and what it then becomes. So let's start with just simply reading the death of Jesus. And this is in Mark chapter 15, verses 21 through 41. And it goes like this. So first of all, Jesus has been arrested. He has been tried. He's been not really found guilty so much as the crowds have made it a political problem for the leaders. And so, Pilate's fine, crucify him. What do I care, essentially? And so he's carrying the cross, which is not an actual cross. It's more it's a beam that you would have, because what they do is they pick a tree and they raise the beam up. Mm-hmm. And then they nail you to the beam and then raise you up and then nail your feet to the tree. That's how typical Roman crucifixion would go. So he's carrying this beam and he can't do it. He's stumbling and falling and can't make it because they've already beaten him and tortured him. So graphic. They compelled a passerby, they being the Roman soldiers. They compelled a passerby who was coming in from the country to carry his cross. It was Simon of Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus. Then they brought Jesus to the place called Golgotha, which means the place of skull. And they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, which is basically to numb the pain. But he did not take it. And they crucified him and divided his clothes among them, casting lots to decide what each should take. It was 9 o'clock in the morning when they crucified him. The inscription of the charge against him read, "The King of the Jews." Isn't that interesting and ironic? And with him they crucified two bandits, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by derided him, shaking their heads and saying, "Aha! You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself and come down from the cross." Again, if your theology of Christ is, orthodox, then he can, and he's not, and that's worth noting. In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes, were also mocking him among themselves and saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. Let the Messiah, the King of Israel, come down from the cross now, so that we may see and believe." Those who were crucified with him also taunted him, which is different from some of the other depictions of the crucifixion. When it was noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani," which is, this is the problem with COVID. I can't find words now.
Brain fog.
Greek, Hebrew, Aramaic. It's Aramaic, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me?" when some of the bystanders heard it, they said, "Listen, he's calling out for Elijah," because Eloi, Eloi, they thought he was saying Elijah. And there's a lot of wrapped up in the Elijah prophecy of like Elijah is coming back, the prophet Elijah is coming, and he's bringing God and the kingdom of God with him, and people were talking that way about Jesus, and now he's saying Elijah, Elijah, like it's going down, it's about to go down, is kind of what's going on right now. Listen, he's calling for Elijah, and someone ran, filled a sponge with sour wine, and put it on a stick and gave it to him to drink, saying, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to take him down." Even now, they're thinking that the coming kingdom is going to be a political victory, despite everything that Jesus has said. Then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last, and the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. Now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, "Truly this man was God's son." There were also women looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, the younger and of Joseph, and Salome. These used to follow him and provided for him when he was in Galilee. And there were many other women who had come up from him to Jerusalem. If you remember last week, I said Mark makes a point to point out that there were plenty of female disciples. I think one of the reasons that he points out that there are women watching is because, and this is an oft overlooked point of the crucifixion, is that he's naked. They crucify you naked. Mm-hmm. Because the point is not only to have a penalty against, standing against Rome and being a problem for Roman government, it's also to be a public display of shame and humiliation and torture so that no one else does it either. And this is obviously why his disciples scatter. They just run for their lives, So this is a tricky topic. I'm curious, what do you make of a dead God? Like, essentially, we worship a God who died. And I'm curious about what that means to you, if you've ever thought about it, what comes to mind, even if it's just kind of random feelings and thoughts. Where does that sit with you? Because it's a complex and I think we might be the only major faith in the world that kind of does this.
Yeah, I mean, I hadn't, obviously I've thought about it, but not, thought about it that bluntly before, necessarily. I think, for me, when you say the word, it's dead, I think of, obviously Jesus rises from the dead. But what I think of is one of the things that we frequently say, where we say, part of being a Christian is that we believe that when bad things happen, when bad traumatic things happen, God is there, he's in the room, and he chooses to do nothing about it. So that's maybe the first thing that popped into my head. And so I'm wondering how much of that, that makes me think of he's choosing to do nothing about it, but there's more to the story there.
Yeah.
That's what I think of.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's an important part of the crucifixion too. I identify with that a lot. Chloe, do you have anything that comes up for you?
Kind of similar along to what Courtney was saying in terms of, you think about it, but then you don't think about comparing to other religions, how having a God that has died, I guess, essentially. This is kind of similar to a conversation I feel like we just had. Not all things that happen for a reason at all, but that God can redeem all situations. And he does, because there's more to the story. It's kind of
I think so this is an interesting hypothetical. I'm not sure how valuable it is. I don't know. We'll play with this for just a second. I wonder if it is theologically conceivable or possible for did Jesus have to die? Or at least in that way. Did he have to be tortured to death by an oppressive human system that he came to redeem and save. Is it even a possibility that people could have been like, hey, you know what? This guy's got some great points. Like, let's listen to what he's got to say and see if we can make a better world out of it. And I think there's something in the crucifixion that kind of implies that that's not really possible.
My immediate answer to that was no. And I think about, some of my own, like, some of the things that we've talked about at Kindred that I truly believe that I've seen happen in my own, like, working through what I think of faith in God. And, like, I think about that concept of you have to die to the thing that literally destroys you in order to find hope and healing and new life. Like, the way out is through. It's not around. It's not avoiding. It's not coping. It's through the pain and through the frustration and through the, like, bullshit.
Yeah, I certainly think that is the deeper metaphor of the crucifixion. So I want to go back to what you guys were saying about, the opposite of everything happens for a reason. The implication that whatever's bad is happening to you is being caused directly by God. Versus. I think a more nuanced, but also difficult, but I think it is true, a nuanced reality that no, God is allowing you to suffer through an imperfect and broken world that he created and is responsible for.
Right.
And that there is a reason that God is not intervening. And it's similar to what we just talked about, last week. We just talked about it like just now. With the Gethsemane, is there any other way? Please take this cup from me. Please let me out of this. I don't want to have to go through this. And the answer is, sorry.
Yeah.
You have to go through this. There is no other way through this. This is it, And God's refusal to kind of like change. And I think there is, and it's really hard to talk about if you are actively going through something like that, then this version is not for you. Go back and look at when we talk about Job and grief, and but here's the theology as best I can understand it. And this is having gone through it and kind of come out the other end of it a few times now in my life in major ways. There's something about the freedom that God extends to us. We're the only creatures on earth that know that we die. We're the only creatures who have to bear that burden, but also have that as a pretty strong motivator to make meaning, and it forces us into something beyond survival. We have a conscious awareness and a shared consciousness that we are shaped by and like motivated by, at least most of us. There's psychopaths out there, sure, but most of us have this kind of like desire to kind of do something. And we can either run from that, numb ourselves to it, not feel it, not experience it, or we can kind of lean into the fact that we're probably not equipped and not capable to really do that well, and we need help from something. And essentially, I think this is the metaphor for the death and the resurrection part. The thing that is bigger than us and the God that we worship is a God who knows what it is to suffer, who does not spare himself from suffering. So the fact that he's allowing bad things to happen is not like trite. It's not a shallow thing. It's not a God on a cloud saying, yeah, sucks for you. It's a God on a cloud saying, I'll abandon everything to come down there and prove to you and demonstrate to you that there really is meaning in this suffering. There really is something redemptive that's possible, and I'll put myself on the line, or my son on the line, depending on what kind of theology you want to come at this from. I will put everything on the line to demonstrate to you that it's there's a scene in the movie Fight Club where the two characters, I won't spoil anything, the two characters are, they're just kind of like in the kitchen, and one of the characters basically pulls a a chemical burn, puts a chemical burn on the guy's paw or on the top of his hand. And it's just excruciating pain, you know? And he starts to try and dissociate, and he starts to try and meditate. And he's like, no, your pain is here. Look at it. Do it. And he's like, you don't know how this feels. And then the guy holds up his hand, and he's got a scar on his hand. He's like, yes, I do. And there's something about that I think is in the crucifixion. There's the like, you don't know how this feels. You don't understand what it's like to be in this broken world and to suffer whatever it is that you might be suffering. And God holds up his hand and says, yes, I do. And like, that's important to me. That's really important to me, because otherwise God's kind of a, I'll say jerk, which is not the first word I wanted to say. But without that willingness to come and join in the pain and join in the suffering and suffer death and really, really demonstrate the power of what is possible through redemption, it is trite. It's like all the other gods that Romans would have understood completely, which is like, you're here for my amusement. You're here to die for me, not the other way around. And here we have this God that says, no, I'm here to die for you and with you alongside of you. And that is, I think, a vital and very different depiction of just about any other faith that I know of, that I've ever encountered. And I often say it's why I'm a Methodist pastor and not like a universal Unitarian. Because other than that, I'm kind of like, no, I like the UU church. It makes a lot of sense to me. Like, yeah, like let people do their own thing and arrive at their own conclusions. Sounds great. Well, I wish we could do more of that. But I desperately need that kind of God who comes and meets me in my own suffering and doesn't abandon me there. So, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen. Join us for Easter live stream on Easter night, 7 p.m. Join us.